The studio lights feel hotter than usual, almost suffocating, as the camera slowly pushes in. There's a stillness in the air, the kind that comes right before something breaks. Across the table, Angelina Jolie sits composed, her posture calm but her eyes sharp, observant, measured. And then, just a few feet away, Sunny Hostin leans forward, her tone already carrying a quiet intensity. The audience senses it. This isn't going to be a routine interview. Before we step into this moment, if you love real, cinematic talk show drama that feels like you're inside the room, make sure to subscribe to Talk Battles, hit that like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because what you're about to witness, it's not just an interview. It's a collision. The camera cuts wide. Whoopi Goldberg sits at the center, her presence grounding the table like she always does. Decades in the industry have given her a kind of calm authority, an energy shaped by years of navigating difficult conversations, from her Oscar-winning performance in Ghost to her long-standing role as a cultural voice on this very show. She glances between Sunny and Angelina, already sensing where this might go. Angelina shifts slightly in her chair. She's no stranger to pressure. She's faced it in war zones, in humanitarian crises, in interviews where the questions cut deeper than expected. Her voice, when she speaks, is soft, but there's steel underneath it. "It's good to be here," she says, offering a faint smile. Sunny nods, polite but focused. "We're glad you're here," she replies. "But I think people also want to hear from you directly, especially about the choices you've made recently." There's a subtle shift in tone. Not confrontational, yet but deliberate. Angelina tilts her head slightly. "Which choices are you referring to?" The audience leans in. Sunny doesn't hesitate. "You've spent years advocating for humanitarian causes, speaking about justice, displacement, and human rights. But some critics feel there's a gap between that advocacy and how certain personal decisions have played out publicly." A murmur ripples through the audience. It's not loud, but it's there. Angelina's expression doesn't change immediately, but her eyes sharpen just a fraction. "I think," she begins slowly, "that it's important to separate public perception from reality. Advocacy isn't about being perfect. It's about commitment." Sunny nods, but she doesn't back down. "Of course. But when you become a global symbol for those issues, doesn't that responsibility grow heavier? People look to you not just for words, but consistency." There it is, the tension now fully visible. Whoopi shifts slightly in her chair, watching carefully. She's been in moments like this before, on both sides. She knows when a conversation is about to cross that invisible line. Angelina folds her hands in her lap. Calm, controlled. "I've never claimed to be perfect," she says. "And I've never asked anyone to follow me. What I've done is use my platform to bring attention to people who don't have one. Refugees, survivors, families who are often invisible." Her voice remains steady, but there's a quiet intensity building underneath it. Sunny leans in just a little more. "And no one is questioning the visibility you've brought," she says. "But when the public sees contradictions, real or perceived, it raises questions about authenticity." The word hangs in the air like a spark. Authenticity. Angelina exhales softly. Not frustration, something deeper. Measured. "Authenticity isn't about being flawless," she says. "It's about being real. And real life is complicated." The audience goes quiet. Completely quiet. For a brief moment, Whoopi steps in, her voice calm but firm. "Let's not forget, everyone at this table has had moments where the public didn't see the full picture." There's weight behind her words. Years of experience. Years of being misunderstood, criticized, celebrated, and everything in between. Sunny glances at Whoopi, then back at Angelina. "That's true," she admits. "But part of being in the public eye is answering those questions when they come." Angelina nods slowly. "And I'm here answering them." There's a pause. A long one. The camera cuts to the audience, faces frozen, eyes locked on the table. They're not just watching anymore. They're inside it. Sunny takes a breath, choosing her next words carefully. "Then let me ask you this directly," she says. "Do you feel that your public image matches who you are privately?" The question lands harder than anything before it. Angelina doesn't respond immediately. For the first time, she looks away, just briefly. Not avoidance. Reflection. When she looks back, her expression is different. Not defensive. Not angry. Honest. "I think," she says slowly, "that people see fragments. They see moments. Headlines. Clips. But a life isn't made of fragments." Her voice lowers slightly. It's made of choices, some of them difficult, some of them misunderstood. The tension in the room shifts. It's no longer sharp, it's heavy. Sunny listens, really listens, but she's not finished. Do you think, she continues, that sometimes those choices create confusion for the very people you're trying to help? Angelina's gaze holds steady now. I think people are stronger than we give them credit for, she replies. They don't need perfection from me. They need honesty. And action. Whoopi nods quietly, almost to herself. The audience exhales, but the tension doesn't disappear. It lingers, like a storm that hasn't fully passed. Sunny leans back slightly this time, her tone softening, but her eyes still searching. I respect that, she says. I really do. But these conversations matter. Because influence matters. Angelina gives a small nod. And that's why I'm having it. The camera slowly pulls back. From the outside, it looks like a conversation. Controlled. Civil. But inside the room, something deeper has been set in motion. Because this isn't just about questions anymore. It's about identity, responsibility, perception. And neither of them is stepping away. The lights still burn overhead. The audience still watches, breath held. And somewhere beneath the calm voices and measured words, the real confrontation is only just beginning. The silence doesn't break, it stretches. For a moment, the studio feels suspended in time, like everyone is waiting for something invisible to finally snap. Angelina Jolie sits still, her expression composed, but there's a quiet shift in her posture now, less guarded, more deliberate. Across from her, Sunny Hostin studies her carefully, as if weighing not just the words spoken, but the ones left unsaid. And at the center, Whoopi Goldberg watches both of them, her presence steady, grounded in decades of navigating moments exactly like this. But the air has changed. Sunny leans forward again, this time slower, more intentional. Let's talk about impact, she says, her tone no longer probing but precise. Because you've worked with global organizations, you've spoken at the United Nations, you've met with world leaders. That's not just influence, that's power. A ripple moves through the audience. Angelina nods once. It's responsibility, she corrects gently. Sunny doesn't disagree, but she doesn't soften either. And with that responsibility, she continues, comes scrutiny. You've been very vocal about justice, about systems that fail people. But some critics argue that when celebrities step into that space, it can blur lines between advocacy and visibility. The word lands carefully this time. Visibility. Angelina's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in focus. I've never stepped into a space to be seen, she says quietly. I've stepped in to listen. Her voice carries something deeper now, not defensiveness, but conviction shaped over years. Refugee camps, war zones, rooms where cameras didn't matter. Sunny tilts her head. But cameras are there, she replies. And they shape the narrative, whether we want them to or not. There's a pause. Angelina leans back just slightly, her fingers interlacing in her lap. For a brief second, her gaze drifts, not to avoid the question, but to gather something internal. I can't control how a story is told, she says. Only why I choose to be part of it. The audience is completely still again. Whoopi shifts in her chair, her voice entering like a steady anchor. And sometimes, she adds, people forget that showing up at all already invites judgment. There's weight in her words, earned weight. From her early days breaking barriers in Hollywood to her Oscar-winning role in Ghost, to years of sitting at this very table where conversations don't always stay comfortable. Sunny glances at Whoopi, acknowledging the point, but she turns back to Angelina. I hear that, she says. But when people look at you, they don't just see someone who shows up. They see a symbol. Angelina exhales softly. Not frustration, something heavier. And symbols, Sunny continues, are held to different standards. The tension sharpens again. Angelina's gaze locks in now, unwavering. I never asked to be a symbol, she says. And I don't think anyone should be reduced to one. Her tone isn't raised, but it cuts deeper than if it were. Sunny doesn't flinch. But whether you asked for it or not, it exists. There it is. The clash isn't loud. It's controlled. But it's real. The camera cuts briefly to the audience, some leaning forward, others exchanging glances, all aware they're witnessing something rare. Not a shouting match. Something more dangerous. Precision. Angelina nods slowly, acknowledging the truth in Sunny's words, even if she doesn't fully agree. Then maybe the conversation shouldn't be about the symbol, she says. Maybe it should be about the work. Sunny pauses. Just for a second. And what if the symbol affects how the work is received? She counters. Angelina's lips press together briefly. This time, the pause is longer. The kind that fills the entire room. Inside, something shifts. Not visible, but present. Angelina's voice, when it returns, is quieter, but heavier. Then maybe we need to trust people to think deeper, she says. To look beyond headlines. Beyond assumptions. Sunny watches her closely. And do you think they do? A beat. Angelina's answer comes without hesitation. Some do. There's something final in the way she says it. Not dismissive, but resolved. Whoopi leans forward slightly, her tone soft but firm. Let me ask both of you something, she says, cutting through the tension without breaking it. Is this really about perception or expectation? The question lands differently. Not sharp, not confrontational, but it lingers. Sunny considers it. Angelina does too. And for a brief moment, the energy at the table shifts, not away from conflict, but deeper into it. Sunny speaks first. I think it's about both, she says. Because when someone builds a platform on certain values, people expect alignment. And when they don't see it, they ask questions. Angelina nods slightly. And they should, she says. That catches Sunny off guard, just for a fraction of a second. But Angelina continues. Questions are important, she adds. They mean people are paying attention. They care. Her voice grows steadier with each word. But assumptions, she continues, those can erase the truth. The audience reacts, subtle but noticeable. A shift. A murmur. Agreement from some. Uncertainty from others. Sunny leans back now, studying Angelina differently. Less like an opponent. More like someone trying to understand the space between intention and perception. And what would you say, Sunny asks slowly, to people who feel disappointed? The word is softer than before. But somehow it hits harder. Angelina doesn't look away this time. I'd say, I understand, she replies. There's no defensiveness. No hesitation. Just honesty. I'd say, she continues, that I'm still learning. Still growing. Just like anyone else. The room feels different now. Not lighter, but deeper. And I'd say, she adds, that the work matters more than the image ever will. A long silence follows. The kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Whoopi nods slowly, almost to herself. Sunny doesn't speak immediately. For the first time since the conversation began, she hesitates. Not because she's backing down, but because something in the tone has shifted beyond confrontation. And yet, the tension isn't gone. It's evolving. Because beneath the words, there's still something unresolved. Something neither of them has fully said. The camera slowly pushes in again. The audience leans closer. And just as it feels like the conversation might settle, Sunny inhales, her expression sharpening once more. Then let me ask you this, she says quietly. And instantly, the room tightens again. Because whatever comes next isn't going to stay gentle. The air tightens so suddenly it feels like the entire studio inhales at once. Sunny Hostin doesn't raise her voice, but there's a new edge to it now. Sharper. More direct. The kind of tone that signals the conversation is about to cross into territory you don't walk back from easily. Then let me ask you this, she repeats, her eyes locked on Angelina Jolie. Do you think that being protected by fame has ever shielded you from the consequences that ordinary people would face for the same decisions? A collective murmur ripples through the audience, this one louder, impossible to ignore. Even Whoopi Goldberg shifts in her seat at that. That question lands differently. It's no longer about perception or symbolism. It's about privilege. Angelina doesn't answer immediately. For the first time since the interview began, her stillness feels heavier. Not just composed, but deliberate, like she's choosing each breath carefully before stepping forward. Her gaze doesn't break, but something behind it changes. Fame, she says slowly, doesn't protect you from consequences. Her voice is calm, but there's weight behind it now. Experience. History. It changes the way those consequences are seen. The audience quiets again, drawn in. Sunny doesn't nod this time. She leans in further. But does it change how they're felt? She asks. The question slices clean through the moment. Angelina's fingers tighten slightly where they rest in her lap. Barely noticeable, but real. Inside her mind, something flickers. Years of public scrutiny, deeply personal moments turned into headlines, decisions dissected by people who would never know the full story. The cost of being visible in a world that doesn't offer privacy as a luxury. But she doesn't retreat. I've lived with consequences, she says, her voice quieter now, but more intense. Very real ones. There's no elaboration. No defense. Just a statement. Sunny watches her carefully. Not dismissing it, but not stepping away either. Of course, she says. But there are people who don't have the option of navigating those consequences with resources, with influence, with a platform. The word platform echoes again, this time heavier than before. Angelina nods once. I'm aware of that, she says. Sunny tilts her head slightly. Then how do you reconcile it? There's no hostility in her tone now. But there's no softness either. This is the core of it. The question beneath every other question. Angelina exhales slowly, her shoulders lowering just a fraction. Not in defeat, but in acceptance of the weight of what's being asked. You don't reconcile it, she says. The answer catches the room off guard. You carry it, she continues. You stay aware of it, and you try to use whatever position you're in to make space for others. Her voice is steady, but there's something raw underneath it now. Something real. Sunny doesn't interrupt. For the first time, she lets the words sit. But then, you say you make space, she replies. But some critics argue that celebrity advocacy can sometimes take space away from the very voices it's trying to elevate. The tension spikes again. The audience shifts, some nodding, others frowning, all completely locked into the moment. Angelina's eyes sharpen slightly. That depends on how it's done, she says. Sunny leans in. And how do you ensure it's done right? Angelina pauses. This time, it's not hesitation. It's intention. You listen more than you speak, she says. You step back when it's not your place. And you accept that you won't always get it right. The honesty in that lands. Hard. Whoopi finally leans forward again, her presence cutting through the intensity. Not to stop it, but to ground it. You know, she says, her voice calm but firm. This isn't a new conversation. Both women glance toward her. Whoopi continues, her gaze steady, reflective. People have been asking these questions for decades, about actors, artists, public figures stepping into spaces that are bigger than entertainment. There's history in her tone now. Years of watching the same debates unfold in different forms. She shifts slightly, adding, I've seen it happen with people like Denzel Washington, someone who's always been very intentional about how he speaks on issues. Careful. Measured. The mention of Denzel changes the energy slightly. He's talked before, Whoopi continues, about responsibility, not just in what you say, but when you say it, and whether you're adding clarity or noise. The audience listens closely. Sunny nods thoughtfully. That's exactly the concern, she says, because intention doesn't always equal impact. Angelina turns slightly toward Whoopi now, acknowledging the point before looking back at Sunny. I agree with that, she says. That answer lands differently. Not defensive. Not dismissive. Agreement. But Sunny doesn't ease up. Then how do you measure your impact? She asks. Angelina's gaze steadies again. You don't measure it in headlines, she says. Or applause. You measure it in whether the people you're trying to support actually feel supported. The audience reacts, this time more visibly. A few nods. A quiet from somewhere in the crowd. But Sunny's expression remains focused. And if they don't, she presses. The question lingers. Angelina doesn't look away. Then you listen, she says simply. And you adjust. There's something final in that answer. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. The tension in the room shifts again. Not disappearing, but evolving into something more complex. Because now, it's no longer just a confrontation. It's a collision of perspectives that don't fully cancel each other out. They coexist. Uneasily. Whoopi leans back slightly, her eyes moving between them, sensing the shift. But the moment isn't over. Not yet, because Sunny, after a brief pause, asks one more question, quieter than the others, but somehow heavier than all of them. And do you think, she says slowly, that the public still trusts you? The audience freezes. Completely. Angelina doesn't answer right away. This time, the silence stretches longer than any before it. Her eyes drop, just for a second, then rise again. And when she speaks, her voice carries something different. Not just strength, not just control, but vulnerability. That's not for me to decide, she says. A beat. That belongs to them. The camera cuts to the audience, faces stunned, thoughtful, conflicted. Back to Sunny, who, for the first time, doesn't have a follow-up ready. Back to Whoopi, who exhales slowly, the weight of the moment settling in. And back to Angelina, still composed, still steady, but no longer untouched, because something has shifted, something real. And as the lights continue to burn overhead, one thing becomes clear. This conversation hasn't ended. It's reached its breaking point. And whatever happens next won't stay inside this room. The silence doesn't end, it fractures. For a split second after Angelina Jolie's final words, the entire studio feels suspended, like gravity itself has paused to listen. That belongs to them. No music, no movement, just breath, hundreds of people holding it at once. Then, somewhere in the audience, a single clap breaks through. Another follows. And then, a wave. Not loud at first, not explosive, but building, uneven, conflicted. Some clap out of respect. Others hesitate, their hands hovering, unsure whether they've witnessed something admirable or unsettling. The camera cuts to Sunny Hostin. For the first time since the conversation began, she leans back fully into her chair. Not defeated, not triumphant, just still. Her expression is thoughtful, almost introspective, as if she's replaying every word in real time. At the center, Whoopi Goldberg exhales slowly, her eyes scanning the room like someone who understands exactly what just happened, and exactly how far it's about to travel beyond these walls. Well, Whoopi says finally, her voice cutting gently through the aftermath. That's why we have these conversations. It's not a conclusion. It's a release valve. But the tension doesn't disappear. It lingers in the air like heat after a fire. The camera pulls back as the segment fades out, but the energy doesn't follow the script. Audience members are already whispering, leaning into each other, dissecting what they just witnessed. Did you hear what she said? That was intense. She didn't really answer that. No, she did. Just not how people expected. The credits roll. But the story doesn't stop. Backstage, the atmosphere is completely different. The lights are dimmer. The smiles are gone. Producers move quickly, voices low but urgent. Phones are already in hands. Notifications lighting up screens in rapid succession. Clips are being cut. Moments are being isolated. That one question. That one answer. That belongs to them. In a quiet corner, Sunny Hostin stands with a producer, her arms crossed, not defensive but processing. Was it too much? The producer asks carefully. Sunny shakes her head slightly. No, she says. It was necessary. But even as she says it, there's a flicker of something else in her eyes. Not doubt. Reflection. Across the room, Angelina Jolie is gathering her things, her movements calm, unhurried. A member of her team leans in, speaking quietly, but Angelina doesn't respond immediately. She's somewhere else for a moment. Not in the studio. Not in the headlines that are already forming. But in that question. Do they still trust you? Her expression doesn't break, but it deepens. Because for all the composure she held on stage, that question stayed. Whoopi approaches her slowly, her presence steady as ever. You held your ground, Whoopi says quietly. Angelina looks up, offering a small, genuine nod. So did she. There's no hostility in her voice. Only recognition. Whoopi smiles faintly. That's the point, she says. It's not about winning. Angelina exhales softly. It never is. For a moment, the noise of the backstage world fades into the background. Two women. Two generations of navigating visibility, pressure, expectation. Understanding something unspoken. But outside, the explosion has already begun. Within minutes, clips from the interview flood platforms like YouTube, X, and TikTok. Headlines hit fast. Aggressive. Divided. Angelina Jolie put on the spot intense live interview. Sunny Hostin challenges Hollywood activism. Fans divided. Did Angelina dodge the question? Social media reacts. The comments sections ignite. She handled that with so much grace. No, she avoided accountability. Sunny asked what everyone was thinking. People just expect perfection from her. It's unfair. The narrative fractures instantly. Some clips frame Angelina as composed, reflective, a woman refusing to be reduced to headlines. Others frame Sunny as fearless, asking the questions no one else would dare to ask on live television. And somewhere in between, the truth becomes complicated. News outlets begin pulling in context, revisiting Angelina's humanitarian work, her years with the UN, her visits to refugee camps across the globe. Interviews where she spoke not as a celebrity, but as an advocate. At the same time, panels begin forming. Discussions about celebrity activism, about privilege, about whether visibility helps or harms the causes it tries to represent. Even names like Denzel Washington start trending again, not because he was there, but because of past interviews where he spoke about responsibility, about speaking less and doing more. His words are clipped, reshared, reinterpreted in the context of what just happened. And at the center of it all, that one exchange, that one moment, back in the studio, long after the audience has gone and the lights have dimmed, the chairs still sit in place. Empty, but charged. Because what happened there wasn't just an interview. It was a mirror, held up not just to one person, but to an entire idea. Of fame, of responsibility, of expectation. And mirrors don't give answers. They reflect. Hours later, Sunny Hostin scrolls through the reactions on her phone. She pauses on one comment, simple, direct. That wasn't an attack. That was accountability. She locks her screen. Not satisfied. Not regretful. Just aware. In another part of the city, Angelina Jolie sits by a window, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. Her phone rests face down beside her. She hasn't looked at it yet. Maybe she doesn't need to, because she already knows. The conversation didn't end on that stage. It multiplied. And somewhere out there, millions of people are still asking the same question. Do they trust her? But the answer is no longer hers to give. And that's where the story leaves us. Not with resolution, but with perspective. So now it's your turn. What do you think really happened in that moment? Was it a fair question, or did it cross a line? Did Angelina Jolie stand her ground, or sidestep the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is far from over. And if you want more intense, reality-inspired showdowns like this one, make sure to subscribe to Talk Battles, hit like, and stay tuned. Because the next moment might be even bigger.